Check. What happened to her was a travesty of justice, not only because of how the government acted, but also what ultimately happened. In order to understand the egregious levels of bad governance, we need to go back to since before her death. The entire agreement had roots since American colonization. The irony in this can be found in the Mutual Defense Treaty, written only 5 years after being independent. It was intended in reaffirming their faith in the purpose and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, to fight side by side against imperialist aggression and desiring to defend themselves against external armed attack. If this was not an act of imperial aggression, an external armed attack on an innocent civilian, I don't know what is. Her case was considered a use of the transpanic defense. It is a legal strategy in which a defendant claims they acted in a state of violence, temporary insanity, committing assault or murder because of unwanted same-sex sexual advances. A defendant may allege to have found the same-sex sexual advances so offensive or frightening that they were provoked into reacting, or acting in self-defense, were of diminished capacity, or were temporarily insane, and that this circumstance is exculpatory or mitigating. This American soldier we call Pemberton was 19 by the time of the killing. He used this argument during court, but it got him arrested. What ultimately saved the fellow was the GCTA, the same system that was supposed to free a certain heinous criminal called Mayor Sanchez. The GCTA in itself is a form of bad governance. Pemberton was supposed to be arrested and detained for 20 years since the sentence was reclusión temporal. That got shortened when he was given the sentence of homicide to 12 and reduced even more by the GCTA to 6 months. Accountability was not present at the trial, as the trial wasn't accountable to the people, rather to a series of bribes and treaties beset by the VFA. When questioned about who will have the custody of offending United States personnel under the jurisdiction of the Philippines during investigation and trial, it is reported that upon request by U.S. authorities, the custody of offending U.S. personnel shall be handled by U.S. authorities until after all judicial proceedings are completed. The United States, however, shall have the obligation for 1 year, which shall not include the time for appeal, to produce the accused for investigation and trial. In cases of special importance to it, the Philippines may request custody of accused U.S. personnel. In case of disagreement between the parties, the matter shall likely be resolved at the diplomatic level. The U.S. authorities are bound by the agreement to take full account of such request. In the unlikely event of disagreement between the parties, the matter shall be resolved at the diplomatic level. They were accountable to the treaty. They were accountable to America. They were accountable to Pemberton. They were accountable to the fact he was an American soldier. They were accountable to the millions of dollars in fees he had to pay, and he did pay. They were accountable to the dollar, but they were never accountable to the people and the spirit of the law, especially not Jennifer. An organization or an institution is accountable to those who will be affected by its decisions or actions. She was affected most, and all the family could get is indemnities? There was multiple problems as well with the trial in general. The judge was biased on both fronts, with which is not biased or even in keeping with the credit of the law. Harry Roque chose to milk a cash cow, then demand justice when he used this indemnity system. The fact that our lives can be given worth in dollars alone is a problem in of itself. It wasn't even participatory, as it did not involve the larger audience of Filipinos and the spirit of fighting side by side against imperialist aggression. there is a wider discussion not only on trans rights, but also states' rights that was willfully ignored, and the idea of sovereignty on the subject of criminal jurisprudence that was thrown out the window like a cleric in Prague. There was no rule of law that was inherent or sovereign. This wasn't a trial. This was a diplomatic negotiation. A 2006 statement on the subject of rape cases happening in and around the American bases said, quote, "The VFA provides a mechanism for consultations on requests for custody on a case-by-case basis. The accused remain confined to quarters under custody of the U.S. to ensure that they are available for Philippine judicial proceedings. We recognize that a case like this stirs strong emotional and political reactions. We believe that the judicial process should take its course in order for justice to be served. The VFA provides the framework for that process to move forward, in addition to providing the framework for strengthening military and security operation to the benefit of both our countries. If the state were in fact exercising the power accorded to their bodies, no treaty made by heaven or hell will be able to regret justice to any one person offended in lethal ways by the party of another. In fact, the only time we can actually file a full case legally would be when they are in times of leave. Pemberton was not." The government was not responsive nor equitable since they chose the treaty over human life. They chose the U.S. military over a grieving family. They chose capital over their kalahi. And when it all came down, there was silence. Maybe it was the zeitgeist of that era, but the times we live in has changed over the 5 years, and here we are, seeing Scott walk. September 2 of this year, a local court ordered the release of Joseph Scott Pemberton, the U.S. Marine Lance Corporal convicted of killing Filipino transgender woman Jennifer Laude in 2014. According to the September 1 decision of the Olongapo City Regional Trial Court's Branch 74, Pemberton should walk free for, quote-unquote, good behavior. Pemberton has served a total of 2,142 days, or just over 5 years and 8 months in prison, but the court decided to him a good conduct time allowance of 1,548 days, or more than 4 years. This yields an accumulated jail time of 10 years, 1 month, and 10 days, the court said. Thus, he is now entitled to be released, for he had already served the 10-year maximum of his penalty. The order, signed by presiding judge Rolin Ines Habalde, read, "The Court of Appeals initially sentenced Pemberton up to 12 years of imprisonment, but this was later reduced to a maximum of 10 years. The good conduct time allowance under the revised penal code applied in Pemberton's case was under intense scrutiny in 2019 after it was revealed that some heinous crime convicts would be freed due to the measure. Another revelation this is that the GCTA system really doesn't work at all. This prompted the government to revise its implementing rules and regulations. And it still didn't work. The Laude family appealed the court decision on Wednesday, arguing that Pemberton should not enjoy early release without proof of his behavior or participation in rehabilitation activities while in jail. The motion for reconsideration added that Pemberton has never even joined fellow convicts at the New Bilibid prison since he has been serving sentence solo and comfortably in Camp Aguinaldo. The U.S. soldier has been detained at the custodial center of the Armed Forces Headquarters in Quezon City, in line with the 1998 Visiting Forces Agreement with the U.S. This, in my opinion, is the true nature of bad governance in the Philippines. Biases affecting bureaucracies, laws made to contradict, and treaties being upheld over the power of the state. For more details, I've attached links to this video. Thanks for watching. See you next week.